Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to another race review podcast, and we are going to dissect all the action from Sunday's race. Obviously you will notice there was no race reaction from us this weekend because we were at the British Touring Cars, so I hope you're looking forward to that vlog that we did there. That will be out with you Thursday, but guys, if you're new around here, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification, and you can keep up to date with all our latest content for more videos just like this. But yeah, we should probably just get cracking into the race. So to start off, do you want to do 1 to 10 and I do 11 to 20? Oh, can you remember 1 to 10? We're going to do the race order.
Can I remember all of them? No, but I can have a go.
You
and
can
try.
certainly do the top 5. And if you struggle,
do you know what?
there.
I'll try the top 10 and then you can correct me.
Yeah, there we go.
We've got to remember, I had to watch it last night when we got back from the racing.
Yeah.
So I was watching it at 10 o'clock last night, and yeah.
I did have the luxury of watching it this morning, so I was a bit more with it.
So, let's have a go.
Let's go, Ash.
Winner of the race, Lewis Hamilton. Second, Valtteri Bottas. Third, Charles Leclerc. Fourth, Max Verstappen. Fifth, Alexander Albon. Sixth, Carlos Sainz. Seventh was Sergio Perez. Eighth, very fortuitous Lando Norris. Ninth, K-Mag. And the final points paying position is where I struggle. I believe it was Hulkenberg, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was Hulkenberg. Yeah.
Nico, yeah.
Look at that, see?
Oh, brilliant. There we go. Oh, now I'll put myself under pressure to go from there. Right. 11 was Lance Stroll. Just missed out on the points. 12 was Daniel Kvyat in his home Grand Prix. 13th was Kimi Raikkonen. 14 was Pierre Gasly. And 15 was Antonio Giovinazzi. And then obviously we had a lot of DNFs. Ashley actually got that right, that it would be 15 finishes. He did suggest a first instant corner, which I think Ricciardo retired from it.
Yeah, so, 2 of them that retired.
Grosjean obviously was the instant retirement. So yeah, so Kubica, Russell, Vettel obviously, Ricciardo and Grosjean all retired from the race. So that finished the non-classified finishes. And I think we discussed, well, we didn't really discuss it, I think just a little brief note before we start to film it, we're like, just going to get it out of the way. Team orders.
Yep. Ugly head of team orders appeared again, second race running, and this time, well, where do we start? Firstly, I called it. Again, I did quite well with predictions for this race.
You did. Mate, why didn't you do well enough to win us a trip to the US Grand Prix, Ash?
Because it was for things other than
that's true.
That's true. F1 want to see. It was more I just was predicting things all over the place for it. But it was more the fact that the plan was put in place, and it was the fact that it was played out over team radio that made it quite intriguing, shall we say.
It was just bizarre.
So, for those that don't know, the plan was that Leclerc was going to give Sebastian Vettel the toe into turn 2, because turn 1's not a turn. But that meant that he was staying off of the racing line though, wasn't he? Because normally you'd cut over to the right hand side on it. He gave Sebastian Vettel the toe to make sure that Ferrari had the 1-2 going into the second corner, so that they could control the race. The plan then was for Vettel to give the place back to Leclerc, but Vettel was too quick for him, basically, because that was the case. And we had a repeat of Multi 21, and Sebastian Vettel refused to give up the place to Charles Leclerc.
And then Ferrari decided to take matters into their own hands and do one of the most bizarre things I've seen from them this season, and that's saying something from Ferrari, which is basically throw Seb out under the bus on tyres that were gone, when he was asking to pit and saying that he had to stay out until he had lost enough time that Charles Leclerc would get him on the undercut. So I think he stayed out an extra 2 or 3 laps longer than he was meant to, just because of that. And I'm going to be brutally honest on this. Team orders, we saw it last week in Singapore, and we missed our race review podcast because I wasn't too well, and so we didn't get a chance to talk about it there. But now we're just going to bring it into this whole thing. Team orders need to be banned again. For me, they ruin racing. I want to see races decided on tracks. The drivers are the best people in position. For me, it's too many kind of chefs in the kitchen. The strategists obviously do a wonderful job. Pre-race, okay, that's fine. I don't agree with the pre-plan in terms of giving positions and then having to give that back. Sebastian Vettel's quicker anyway. So it's stupid to compromise your own race, and they would have compromised Vettel's race if he had to give the position back on track, because it would have made him too close to Hamilton, and then you don't know. You saw in the race that Hamilton only needs a sniff to be able to claim that victory. But it's just absolutely ridiculous, and we end up talking, and everyone's talking about team orders post-race, and something like Alexander Albon started in the pit stop. We'll talk about it later on because it was fantastic and deserves its own kind of segment, but he did that, drove to 5th, absolutely fantastic, his best drive to date in a Red Bull, and nobody talks about it because team orders were just covered for the whole race, and people saying it was wrong for Vettel to do it, and I was completely with Paul di Resta on commentary. He was like, why are they doing this? This is ridiculous. Vettel got a great start. If it was Hamilton Bottas, you're going to go for the slipstream regardless. It's not like it's a crazy plan that they've gone out there. If you're a kind of trailing driver, you go behind the driver who's piercing the air, kick the slipstream, and then go past him. That's it. You've just got to defend as a driver, and it just takes away from racing for me, and it just needs to go. Bottas was ridiculous in Singapore. This was ridiculous, and it's just absolutely stupid, and it's made Ferrari look an absolutely shambolic team this weekend. And that's not mincing my words. I did not like this at all.
See, I wouldn't go as far as saying team orders need to be banned, because I would say that there are instances where they can be used to obviously actually protect results. Like this season, the amount of times where there's been team orders that has to say stop racing each other, because the fact that it is getting to the point.
Well, I'm okay with that point where they start damaging cars. That's okay, but at this point there was no damage to cars, and it's feeling almost like Leclerc. He comes across. He doesn't. Leclerc is a fantastic driver, and we've both said he thinks he's a future world champion. But this is still his second season in Formula One. He still has a lot to learn. And at the end of the day, he wasn't that great in the race. He still had a strong performance, but Vettel was having a very good performance in terms of our race. I mean, he almost had a 5-second gap at one point, and it just seems like shooting yourself in the foot just because of some gritty. It's just stupid.
I'm going to put out an opinion that actually hasn't come out, and I'm surprised that no one's actually mentioned it. Why did they need the plan?
Yeah.
Explain that one to me. Why was the plan actually needed? Because both of the Mercedes were on the medium tyre. Vettel was going to get a quicker start than Hamilton, no matter what. It wasn't as if they were on the same tyres and Hamilton was going to be able to get the jump on both of the Ferraris. It just wouldn't have happened because of the nature of the tyres that were being used. And as can be seen, Carlos Sainz almost got the jump on both of the Mercedes. So it wasn't
He certainly led Bottas for a while as well.
He did, and it was at one point where Lando Norris was actually challenging Bottas as well. So it wasn't as if there was as big a threat as Ferrari were making out. And if you read Matteo Binotta's comments on the reasoning for doing it, their view on what happened, it seems as if all he's trying to do is say Charles Leclerc was right and Sebastian Vettel was right. And the one thing you can say in that situation is you can't say that they are both correct. You have to pick a side in that, and it's not going to happen within the team because they're not going to want to cause issues. You can look at it and say a plan was in place.
Yeah.
Vettel should have stuck to that plan. But then you can also look at it, Vettel was a lot faster than Charles Leclerc was. So why should he have to drop back? Mercedes, when they have used team orders, it has always been to protect a lead or protect a driver because of an issue.
So it's to protect a position. Like,
yeah.
For the Singapore one, although I still think bad, was better than this one because it was protecting Hamilton from being undercut by Alexander Albon because you knew that Singapore was there, so they were maintaining position here. Ferrari had the potential to have 1-2 there, and I think Charles Leclerc's race was actually affected by all of this because he almost felt like an entitlement to the position, and you don't just get given wins in F1, you have to earn them, and you have to earn the position to be first in a race, and if your teammate beats you, then you've got to work hard to do it. And he was pushing, but Vettel put that 4-second gap in place, and it was there. And at the end of the day, we can all get angry, but there wasn't this much outrage in the second, because this one was a pre-plan and gentleman agreement, but there wasn't this much outrage when Leclerc did it to Vettel in Bahrain. Basically, Ferrari said stay behind Vettel, and Leclerc went I'm quicker, and just went past him. So they've both done it. I don't get why they're, and that's how it should be. I'd be exactly the same if this was Vettel in the lead and Leclerc went through there. I'd be like, Leclerc was entitled to go through the win. It's nothing against Charles. It's stupid for me. They've overcomplicated something it doesn't, and it kind of stinks to me that they were upset about the Singapore situation and trying to make Charles happy.
It was overthinking a situation that didn't need as much thinking as they've decided to put into it. As I said, Vettel would have got the jump on Hamilton no matter what, especially the fact that Hamilton was starting second, so didn't have a car in front of him. He wasn't going to pull over to the left because the natural racing line for that run down to turn 2 is to stay on the right hand side. So the only way in which there would have been an issue was if Hamilton had somehow managed to get away because Vettel had bogged down and spun up the rear wheels or anything like that. Having an even start, Vettel was going to be able to pull away from Hamilton.
And he got a better start than Leclerc, which is why he was on the back of Leclerc.
He got the best start out of everyone on the grid. So when he says, I would have got him anyway, he would have. Vettel is correct in that situation. I would say, was it right that he ignored a direct order? No. If anyone else in day-to-day life was to refuse to do something, there would be repercussions. Were Ferrari right to make that order? No. There was no need for that order. Was Charles Leclerc right to feel entitled to that order being made? No. I don't think he has earned enough within the team for it to be an automatic, if I want something done, it has to be.
Which is just so confusing in terms of, because of the amazing last three, all the hard work they've done over the last 3 races, it hasn't completely gone out the window, but it just kind of leaves a real bad tarnish on it, because
at the end of the
they
season,
should have got a 1-2 and smashed Mercedes and broken their dominance at Sochi.
At the end of the season, if someone says, pick out a point of Ferrari's season, the 2 that are going to come up will be Vettel spinning at Monza and this. No one's going to pick out the 3 consecutive race wins now.
I think they might also pick out the Canada spin. Well, the
penalty, okay, maybe. Right. But it's now taken the eye away from what had been a very successful start to the season.
And so I think ban them completely. If you're a good enough if you're a good enough driver to win the World Championship and you're a good enough constructor to win the World Championship, you don't need team orders, consolidate that, you'll do it anyway. I do get the point of doing that, but I just think all the thing off the track, it's a team sport, amazing. I love that side of the work, all the technical side of things, but at the end of the day, they're not racing drivers. And the guys who've driven, especially like a Vettel and like Lewis Hamilton, when they've been involved in not listening to his pit strategy calls that has cost Mercedes, and like you just listen to the guys on track. They are the guys who do it. They know what it is inside out. Just let them go. If they start colliding and they start getting away, step in, because then something needs to be said. But if they're just racing and it's fair, there's no issue. But yeah, right, team orders, bam, done, out the window. God, thank God that bit's done. Now we can start talking about what I quite actually enjoyed the race. I mean, I know people who were saying that it's kind of the end of the run of kind of good run of races. Obviously, it wasn't had the drama of some, but I thought there were still positive moments within it.
There were. I wouldn't say it's going to go into the highlights reel for the season.
Certainly won't.
But it was another race where there were battles throughout the field and there was a lot of wheel-to-wheel racing. So, on the whole...
Which was missed by Sky Sports mostly, because they were only interested in the front of the field, where the only overtakes happened there were Vettel on the first lap, and then obviously under virtual safety car.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one, because once again I've agreed with Martin Brundle.
Oh, what did you think?
So they need to have a look at the rules with regards to the virtual safety car, because Martin Brundle is correct. The whole point of that is to neutralise the race and to keep gaps the same. But by allowing them to continue to make pit stops, you're not neutralising the race, you're having an influence on the result of a race. I can understand why they don't, because it's the same as with a safety car. You're able to pit under a safety car. It's just the whole point of the virtual safety car is, and the explanation of it is, to neutralise the race.
I think if you were going to stop pit stops, you'd have to stop them for both, which wouldn't be the end of the world. Because even under a normal safety car, if you're lucky enough that the safety car gets announced and you're just coming into the pits, say it's a leader or somewhere else in the mid-pack, because there are a lot of... Kevin Magnussen was a huge benefactor of the virtual safety car, because he ended up in 6th position, I think, didn't he?
And so did Alexander Albon, benefited from it as well. So, and it's also the fact that it's taking into account the strategies. Now,
Mercedes went on that medium compound partially to be on the soft compound in the last stage, but also partially in the hope of a virtual safety car.
Well, it was the fact that the hard tyres, which... Who was it that started on them? I can't think.
The hard tyres?
One of the drivers at the back started on the hard compound, and it was because Pirelli have said that the hard compounds could have done 50 laps at Russia. It was a 53 lap race. So it was always going to be at one stop unless you burnt through your rubber too much. So Mercedes, starting on the mediums, knew that they could go through the race at a normal pace really, and if at any point a virtual safety car or a safety car came out, they could dive into the pits, go onto the softs, and they were going to be able to make it to the end. So it's taken into account with strategies as well, which is the thing that bugs me a little bit, because I like the strategy calls like Mercedes did at Hungary.
Yeah.
Like the ones where it's off the wall and yeah, let's go for
There's
it.
an element of risk to it, where this one, the only thing you can say is that it doesn't affect races too much. It doesn't happen
because
all the time.
they are few and far between, and
so that's where you go. It's just an element of luck, and it completely changed things around in terms of that lead, and then it potentially gave us Leclerc racing through the Mercedes trying to claim a victory, but Hamilton and Bottas drove fantastic races, and Leclerc wasn't. I think you were saying that he suffered from the consequence of he sets his car up for Saturday qualifying and then suffers on the Sunday performance.
It's the same with both Ferraris. Their cars are set up for that outright pace, which is a great benefit, especially on tracks like Singapore, where overtaking isn't the easiest, and Russia, whilst overtakes are possible, it's still not one where overtakes come easily. But by setting yourself up for the Saturday, you do have to compromise on your Sunday performance, and that was the issue that Leclerc had. When you look at his performance, he wasn't able to stay behind cars for long enough to be able to attempt an overtake, which is one of the reasons why he started to drop back from Vettel as much as he did at times, because staying as close as he was burning through his tyres a lot quicker, and then he wasn't able to challenge the Mercedes because he would get close enough to, and then his tyres would start overheating. So
he wasn't as quick through that cornering section as what Vettel was.
And I said on Saturday that I'm now starting to believe the hype that the Ferrari is a fast car. The Ferrari is probably the fastest car in qualifying, but it's still not the fastest race car on the grid. I would say that the Mercedes has still got that edge in terms of Sunday performance, and Sunday is where you get the points. So Ferrari still have work to do to catch up to Mercedes in terms of the best overall car, but I would definitely say they have got the fastest car. It's a really weird one.
Yeah,
because I'm saying they've got the fastest car, but the Mercedes is faster.
I get what you mean. Hopefully everyone else gets what you mean, but I get what you mean. So you've got one person who gets what you mean.
There you go then.
If nothing else. I'd quite like to. I think we spend night. We'll just round off. I think it just shows the ruthless streak of Mercedes, that they've been under the pump since Spa, and you just give them a sniff of victory and they're ruthless. And even Bottas was ruthless in terms of that performance. He obviously has come under pressure and had made mistakes when he was chasing Charles in Monza, going from there, but when defending against Charles, it's fantastic. I mean, Leclerc never got close to even making a move on Bottas, and he did not make a single mistake. I know Sochi's a strong track for him, but yeah, it was still a very good drive for him as well. I think obviously Lewis will take the plaudits because he wins, but I think it was a very well-deserved second place for Bottas as well.
I would also say it's almost like a polar opposite of Singapore, and it was Mercedes making the best out of a Ferrari strategy mistake, whereas Singapore was Ferrari benefiting from a poor Mercedes mistake. So it shows that they've learnt from the issues that they had.
I think we might have said it, and me and Stephen definitely said it in the Fancy Week podcast. When Mercedes have a bad weekend, they tend to bounce back. So your bet is probably safe to go on them, and they certainly showed that. But probably talk now about three drivers I want to talk about, because I don't think they necessarily got the coverage that they deserve. They didn't necessarily get the coverage that they deserved, but I think all three drove fantastic races. Verstappen, for me, did what was expected. That was nothing special.
Verstappen did a Verstappen.
It was just standard performance. Albon was fantastic, although that Red Bull car is much better than the rest of the midfield, and it is kind of, they've fallen off the Mercedes and Ferrari, but they're still well ahead of McLaren and the rest of them. On a track that was difficult to overtake on, and some of the overtakes that he pulled off during the race that were actually shown on TV, and he had a really nice battle, I think, with Gasly halfway through the race as well. That was fantastic to watch. Gasly was certainly putting on his highlights reel trying to defend from Albon there.
You wouldn't want to give that position up, would you?
You certainly wouldn't. And he certainly made life very difficult for Albon. And Albon actually, when he finally got past him, I thought it was an incredibly brave move, because he broke late into the corner that in qualifying he spun out and obviously damaged the rear of his car. So he then, I think a couple of times he did overtakes into that part of the track, which just shows that he's a really ballsy driver in terms of he doesn't let, even if he'd made a mistake there in the past, he's like, I'm just going to keep going for it and learn from it.
Well, the one thing I'd say about his drive was, once again, it was nondescript at the start, and I think it took him a little while to get into his rhythm, but once he started to, it picked up. And as you said, yes, you can say that that Red Bull is faster, so he should be making the moves, but if you look at other cars that were trying to fight through the traffic, it wasn't happening. So for him to be able to, really good drive from him. And the one thing I would say is it was a very mature drive, and I think Christian Horner came out and said that he's been very impressed with his performances since he's come into the Red Bull.
I think his exact performance words were for that race, it was like, we hope that he can get 6th, and he did that, and he got 5th. And but yeah, it was an absolute fantastic drive for Alex Albon, and it really should have got more coverage in the race than it actually did.
And he's beaten his performance in China.
He did. He certainly did. It was certainly his best performance in the Red Bull car to date, because although he has the car and the ability to do that, he still has to go and do that. You've still got a load of drivers who want to not give up places, and especially the two that we're going to talk about next in Sainz and Checo, they certainly weren't wanting to give up those positions, and so it was still good to kind of get past them as well. So that probably moves on nicely second to Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, it was another one of those races where Carlos Sainz did what Carlos Sainz does. Fantastic off the line, was electric. The pace he had, yes, as I said, soft tyres versus medium, but it wasn't as if it was one Mercedes that he caught. He got past Bottas and got past Hamilton. Hamilton did obviously have the inside line, which gave him back the place, but his start was up there with Sebastian Vettel's in terms of actual pace off of the line. And throughout the race, just the confidence to defend from Bottas and to just go about his driving, when he could definitely have been one where he wanted to be a lot more cautious and try and guarantee a points position, considering how his luck has been since the summer break. So I was really impressed with his overall drive.
Yeah, and it was what we were all really expecting Carlos Sainz to do in the second half of the season, which was pick up where he left off at Hungary and just keep dominating that best of the rest field. And he's been desperately unlucky in Spa, Monza and in Singapore with kind of all incidents that were out of his control, but he showed that when it was in his control, had a great start, absolutely fantastic, and then he just did what Carlos Sainz does. Doesn't get any coverage on TV, but just goes through the kind of race, does what he needs to do, puts in consistent, really good lap times, kind of no dramas from there, in a rate of his own, and gets the job done. And a fantastic points haul for him, and obviously with Lando Norris also finishing the points. Big step forward, and obviously that extends McLaren's lead over Renault in the constructors as well, which is fantastic for them. And then moving on to the third major performer, he described it as a perfect race and one of his best performances, so didn't he? And he has podiums in Formula 1, so that's quite big for him in terms of saying it. But yeah, it was a fantastic drive from Checo, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's showing that the Racing Point upgrades are kicking in now and starting to show the performance that we were expecting to come from them. Still needing a little bit of work on the Stroll side of the garage, but it's all starting to come together.
It's only on a Saturday, really, isn't it? Because
Exactly.
you consider it. Where did Checo obviously got into Q3, didn't he?
Yes. No.
No, he was
No, he was 13th. So started 12th.
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
he? Or did he get into Q3? Oh, we should know.
Oh, we should have known that. Anyway, he certainly qualified ahead of Lance Stroll. But yeah, Lance Stroll finished qualifying P15. He then makes his work harder on the Sunday because he's got more places to catch up. And if he'd been a bit further up the road, he might have been able to get that points finish ahead of Nico Hulkenberg, who didn't have a great race. So yeah, I was disappointed on that.
Although Lance Stroll has made up the most places on the first lap.
Indeed, so obviously, but that's skewed because of the car being better than where it's positioned on the grid.
Definitely.
But yeah, go back to Checo. Since the summer break, he's been a man possessed. Before that, he hadn't scored a point since Azerbaijan, and now he's scored a point in 3 out of the 4 races. And obviously Singapore, he would have finished in the points. He was certainly competing for the points, actually. He might not have finished in the points, but he lost with engine reliability, which was his 3rd weekend in a row, that it troubled him at least 1 session of the Grand Prix. So it was a smooth weekend, no car dramas, no reliability issues, and just a really great performance by Checo.
Definitely, I would agree. Consistency, that's what it is. Isn't it something like 8th, 7th, DNF 7th? He's 4 results since the summer break. You can't be more consistent than that, really.
No.
I'm unfortunate with the DNF, but staying in and around the points, he's doing the sort of thing that Carlos Sainz was doing at the start, admittedly a few places further back, but consistently getting those points finishes. And Racing Point, yes, Lawrence Stroll has got a lot of money, but they're going to want us to get as much prize money as possible from the Constructors' Championship. So
Yeah. I think they're going to be an exciting team to look at next year.
Definitely.
Because if Lance can sort out his qualifying on a Saturday, then they do have 2 strong Sunday performers. And then, you never know. If they get the aero development right from the start, and obviously they're powered by a Merc engine, which is seen to be at least the most consistent one on the grid. Obviously just talking about a reliability issue the race before, but it hasn't really happened for Mercedes. It didn't happen at all in the first half, so yeah.
First engine issue for a Mercedes was Spa.
Yeah, I think so, which was Kubica blown up in qualifying, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It might have been actually
Perez, Sergio Perez in
FP2, something like that. Yeah, and then I suppose we should really talk about it. You're wearing a shirt. Haas scored their first points since Hockenheim, I believe.
Yes. Now, should have been more. I'm going to go out there. Should have been the extra point.
Do expand, Ash.
Well,
just in case people don't know about the incident.
So, Kevin Magnussen made a move on Sergio Perez. It was, wasn't it? Yeah. Too late on the brakes. Went into the runoff where there's a nice little. It's a bollard, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or
they're
is
kind
it
of like polystyrene.
Yeah, it's not
boards.
Meant to go to the left of it to rejoin the track. He didn't. He said that it was too dangerous for him to turn to the left to go round it. But in all honesty, he'd lost the place defending from Sergio Perez. So he'd already suffered a punishment for it.
I think he backed off to ensure that when going off the runoff area.
So I can understand, yes, the rule is to go round the bollard, well, the sign thing, but he'd already had that punishment from it, and it wasn't as if when he rejoined the track it was a dangerous rejoining. So I can see where the bad feelings are coming from Gunther Steiner and Kevin Magnussen on that one. He has ended up losing an additional place that, in all honesty, Lando Norris hadn't really got close enough to him to ever challenge him for that place. So it was a harsh one, but I can see why it was given.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was because we had the F2 incident earlier in the day, which obviously had caused the incident from someone not going through it. Obviously, Jack Aitken did go through it, and who was it? Was it Mazepin?
It was Mazepin.
Who then went into Matsu Ita?
Yeah.
So yeah, the Japanese driver.
Yeah.
There, I don't know.
More confidence in yourself, you got it.
Yeah, no, I was like, it is that, isn't it? Yeah, sure it is. But obviously they collided earlier in the day, so I think that influences the stewards in what they see, and they're just like, oh well, someone came on dangerously, and then they had to both be checked in hospital afterwards. So that I think comes, but for me, I think a little bit of common sense could be played out in terms of he'd lost the position, he'd eased off, he didn't re-enter the track dangerously. Yes, it wasn't ideal, but he at least one out of the two ones he followed. Because he made sure he was close to, it was a white block and then a yellow block, wasn't it? There was two white ones and a yellow one. He made sure he was close to the yellow one and entered it that way. He only just missed the double white one. They could have let him off, and especially for a team like Haas, you're just like, they've had an hard enough season as it is. Cut the guy some slack.
It was similar to Perez in France, wasn't it? Where he did make sure that he went round and then still got the penalty for gaining an advantage because everyone bunching up. It's one of those where use common sense with it to make the decision. Like in France, Perez shouldn't have got the penalty. He did what was expected of him. It wasn't his fault, everyone bunched up. Here, K-Mag says it would have been dangerous for him to have done it. I can see I wouldn't say it was necessarily dangerous, but I can see where he's coming from. The fact that he's going into a right-hander and then all of a sudden he's changing the steering quickly to go to the left would have unsettled the car to some extent. So I can see his argument and agree with him that he didn't really have the ability to make the move.
At the end of the day, he's the race driver. We're just fans of the sport, and anything we always give is just an opinion, just of what we see and what our fairly uneducated kind of view of the sport.
Speak for yourself, uneducated.
All right. Well, I just say we have a love of the sport, but obviously we're not involved in the running of a team. We haven't driven in the sport. We're not around the paddock or anything like that. So we're uneducated in that side of things. But yeah, I kind of feel like, yes, they want to gain the one position, but it's also K-Mag strikes me as the type of bloke that if he's made a mistake...
He wouldn't have gained the position, would he? Because he was defending.
Well, I mean, like, if, say, Norris was coming close. He seems like the type of bloke that he would hold his hands up and go, that's fair, type of thing. He doesn't seem the type of bloke to try and deceive anyone.
Yeah, and had Norris been coming round at that point or been closer, then yes, I would have understood the penalty being given and been like, fair enough. In this situation, it wasn't the case, so no.
Yeah.
It was given, had to deal with it. Good points for him to get. Just feel he could have had another one.
Yeah, and for me, I don't think there was... Daniel Kvyat obviously had not a great weekend at his home Grand Prix. I think it was one of those, if you could think of something to go wrong, it did. In the race, it was fairly just, the Toro Rosso didn't really look like a car competing in the points, and he beat his teammate. Carsley almost took his front wing, which would have summed up Daniel Kvyat's, then which basically ruined Ghazi's tyres, which meant finished there. Alpha's had a poor weekend. suppose we've got to talk Kimi Raikkonen having a false start, where full start stopped and then carried on going, then obviously received the penalty. That was pretty
clear cut.
Yeah, clear cut. You can't really. I think Paul di Resta said at that stage he's better off just going.
He might as well have done, because he then lost all momentum.
Yeah.
And he dropped back to 20th, didn't he?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's going to get punished anyway. He might as well have just ridden it out and gone for it. Nico Hulkenberg benefited from the virtual safety car, and I was disappointed from him watching. The Renaults was expecting to do well here. Obviously, Daniel Ricciardo was ruined. We'll talk about that as the last incident, I think. But he put the fresh set of softs on, was chasing down Lando Norris on a set of mediums that were a lot older, and wasn't able to catch him or get close to overtaking, which, to me,
just didn't seem to be at the races.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think he came out and said he's bitter. I didn't read, I just saw the headline of he was bitter that Renault deserved more from that race than what he got. So I don't know if he was being self-critical of his own performance as well. But for me, the only really last thing to round off before we do our Rookie of the Weekend would be the first instant clash.
Yes, it was one where, to some extent, all three drivers involved can feel unlucky about it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it was such and such his fault, because it was a racing incident. If Gio had a bit more experience, though, I feel he could have probably pulled out of the move. I think you're going to agree with me based on that reaction, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think it made me laugh, because I think I saw Grosjean post-race said something, we need to show a little bit more respect for each other going in at the start, and I'm like, oh, Grosjean.
But no,
you could not come out and say that with your first lap incidents.
But it was a racing incident, and they're all like, from the run up, the start of the race, they're all close together, jockeying for position. Grosjean's going to have seen Ricciardo. Well, no, he wouldn't have. He would have seen. Grosjean's going to have seen Giovinazzi.
Yeah, so Gio was in the middle of the Ricciardo-Grosjean sandwich.
Ricciardo's going to have seen Giovinazzi, but Grosjean and Ricciardo aren't going to have seen each other, because the mirrors just aren't proper mirrors, really. So Grosjean, so they're both closing in, getting themselves positioned for it. Sandwich Gio in the middle. Grosjean's gone off. His rear suspension was gone. You see that on the replay itself. Ricciardo's got the puncture. Giovinazzi's got damaged front wing. But as I say, the only one there where you can say maybe some fault, I'd say Giovinazzi.
Yeah, I think
that was a gap that was definitely going to close.
Yeah.
So, just
all he went for. I mean, if it was Grosjean in the middle, I think people might have been slightly more harsh on the incident and been crying for his head again to be sacked from F1. But I think it's just one of those things. You go into turn one, sometimes it happens, cars get close to each other, and we were discussing in our preview that turn two into turn three, the track narrows very quickly, and it kind of...
And it is a quick right, left hand.
Yeah,
so
and it screams out for collisions type of thing. It's very rare that kind of things go unscathed into that corner.
If at the start of the season you're to say, pick 3 corners where you can guarantee a first lap incident, I'll probably go turn 1 at Monza, turn 1 at Spa, and then turn 1, 2,
2, 3, Sochi, yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those where maybe put turn 1, Sandport, turn 1 at Monaco. You can do more than 3. Alright, we've got from that.
We've got sidetracked.
Let's leave it.
Turn 1's generally create instance. This turn 2, 3 is no different. yeah, I think that probably rounds up the race. That was like I said, we both enjoyed the race. Obviously, yeah, it's not going to go down as one of the classics of the season, but it still had plenty of intrigue for F1 fans. Obviously, team orders was probably the most thing that came out of it, and the Ferrari, it's the one that's got people most disagreeing, whether you were on Leclerc's side of the argument or Vettel's side of the argument. It seems pretty clear cut, not a thing. I think my side of it is Ferrari. The team itself is in the wrong for manufacturing a situation that was just entirely ridiculous. Yeah. But yeah, we'll move on to just to round off our rookie of the weekend.
Can't really look past Alexander Albon.
No, we'll both agree on that one. So
yes,
we can do it together.
Qualifying mistake, but you can't turn around and say he didn't make up for it, really. Got to the position, well, he actually got one place further ahead of where you would be expecting him to finish.
Obviously, he's benefited from Vettel's retirement there, but he's finished exactly where he was meant to.
But had he not had the mistake in qualifying, still would have ended up finishing there. So, I'd say successful weekend for him. And yes, he hasn't had a perfect run since going into Red Bull, but I would say all of his results have been where the team would be wanting him to, and he's not finishing ridiculously far back in races. He's been close to, at Singapore, was challenging with Bottas. Here, he got up, made up the time. Yes, he didn't challenge Verstappen, but he wasn't really challenged from behind. So I'd say very successful weekend, and so far, very good performances in the Red Bull.
For me, the greatest kind of attribute you can give to his performance was he maximised the points that Red Bull could have got from that weekend on performance without drama going on ahead of them. 5th and 6th is where, or 4th and 5th with Vettel's retirement, is the most that Red Bull could have hoped to get from that weekend on pure performance basis, because they have fallen behind the Mercedes and Ferrari again, where we all expected Red Bull to be the one pushing Mercedes to the end of the season competing. I know when we did our podium predictions, we had Max Verstappen on a lot of them, and we're kind of just like, Ferrari after Monza, no chance, not going to happen. But
we weren't expecting the aero.
They've surprised us with their aero upgrades. But yeah, guys, that is it. That's our race review podcast. Another one round up for you. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, let us know. Drop us a thumbs up down below.
Make sure to press the subscribe button so that all of our videos are going into your YouTube inbox, and if you press the bell icon, then you'll get a notification when one of these videos goes live, and you'll be able to see what we're talking about, and we'll also be able to get straight on for our vlog from the British Touring Cars.
Yeah, and guys, comment down below on what you thought from those key incidents today. I would love to hear your thoughts on team orders and their continued involvement in the sport, or maybe lack of involvement in the sport. Your thoughts on Albon's drive, on Sainz's drive, Checo's drive, and those things, probably don't need to talk about. It was pretty clear cut and dry, the first turn incident. And in the description below, I'll leave some links to our other videos, like our driver ratings that came out yesterday, and we'll also leave our Quali live reaction video so you can see when we both believed in the Ferrari hype, and realistically it should have been a dominating performance for them, but Mercedes, you give them an inch and they take a mile from you, and it was another 1-2 at Sochi, and they continue to be 100% records and continue to absolutely dominate that race in terms of race results. But yeah guys, UF1 fans, keep racing.